This is the Silver Divorce Podcast, broadcast from the Whitfield Media Group studios in Chattanooga, Tennessee. If you are considering or are in the divorce process, we can help. Listen in as our guests share education and advice to help you in your divorce journey. I'm your host, Lisa, and before we start, I want to encourage you to email your questions, your topic suggestions, or guests that you would like to hear from to me at silverdivorcepodcast@gmail.com, or join the conversation on our Facebook and Instagram pages at Silver Divorce Podcast. And now, let's podcast. Well, today we are going to explore the topic of life after divorce. And I know, as for me, when you're in the midst of divorce, it's really hard to even consider what life will look like after divorce. And it's interesting, I was reading some stats from the Health and Retirement Study that said for people over the age of 50, 77% of women never partnered again within 10 years of their divorce. And for men, it was 62% who stayed single. So that is a large number of people who didn't marry again and are pursuing single lives. So the good news is we do have someone here today who can help us navigate that journey. How do you create a single life that you will love? And what's the starting point for doing that? How do you come through divorce and the trauma and begin to create a life that you will love as a single person? So I am very pleased to introduce life coach Holly Holloway. Hello, Holly.
Hey there. It's good to be back with you, Lisa.
Thank you. How's the weather in Colorado?
It's gorgeous. This is, of course, my favorite month of the year, and looking forward to seeing some aspen leaves turning up in the high country. I'm going to be actually camping a little later in the month and hoping that the aspen will be beautiful, golden color that they turn, and that we'll be able to enjoy some hikes in that.
Sounds like a wonderful time to go hiking. We're seeing a little bit we are seeing a little bit of cooling down here in Tennessee.
Okay.
But that cold season is coming. I have to tell you, I went for my annual wellness exam on last week, and on the elevator, a woman got on with me who was sniffling and coughing, and we went up 7 stories together, and the next day I started to feel a little sniffling and coughing, and within 48 hours, I was full-blown into the cold and mode. So it was, I'm recovering now, so I might sound a little nasally, but I do want to encourage you, if you're on Medicare, they do provide an annual wellness visit, and it does have a comprehensive panel of blood testing, and really does help you stay ahead of things that are happening in your body so that you can take care of it early. And then also just a reminder, it is that flu shot season coming up in October. So even though...
That was a good reminder.
Yeah, get that wellness check done. So let me tell you all about Holly before we jump in. She was a guest on our episode titled The Divorce Identity Crisis. And if you've not listened to that, I highly recommend you do so. It really does talk about some of the issues that you can face when suddenly you're not a wife, you're not, you have children out of the house, so you don't have your typical duties as a mother of cooking and taking kids to school, and for men as well, you're not a husband, and that can create a crisis in your identity. So she did a wonderful podcast with us, and I highly encourage that. She is a life coach through the Martha Beck Wayfinder Life Coach Training, and she's made it her calling to help other women through divorce recovery and discover how incredible their lives can be. She divorced at the age of 61 after nearly 30 years of marriage, has 3 adult kids, and she currently lives in Colorado. Although this is very interesting, she and her partner are considering spending a portion of their time in France. So would like to hear more about that, Holly. So before we get started, though, I took part. I just want to disclose I did take part in Holly's program called Blossom, a Woman's Healing Collective. And I have to share that that experience refocused my energy away from what happened to me in divorce to creating a roadmap that did make me stronger in mind and spirit. And I believe it really did propel me to create the life I love. So, Holly, would you tell our listeners a little bit about some of the things that you do to help people in their recovery post-divorce?
Well, sure. And I sure enjoyed having you in the Blossom group, and I'm glad that you found it to be such a helpful experience. So as a life coach, my goal is to help women move from surviving their divorce to thriving. And I want to acknowledge, first of all, that when we are in the middle of going through that process, or when we've just found out, oh my gosh, this is happening, I am getting divorced, it absolutely can feel like a disaster, like the walls are caving in. But my job as a life coach is to help women, and it can take some time and some healing, to actually see that disaster from a different perspective, and that is to start to see it as actually an opportunity to do something completely different with their lives. And that is to build a life that works for you, that you have the freedom to create something that aligns more with your values, with your priorities, with your dreams. And for many women, this can be a first in their lives, a life that's maybe been dedicated for decades to family, to husband, to children, to career, to step back and say, what do I need? What do I want in my life? What feels like something that would give my life meaning and purpose? What's the legacy that I want to leave with my life?
And I think
And I really, yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I think the one important thing to call out is oftentimes women think, I'm too old. My life is over. I'm too old. I can't do anything differently. But that's really not the case. You're never too old.
Oh, absolutely. I've been doing a lot of reading on this lately, and I'm really interested in what, I don't know if I want to call it like a resource, what women like you and I, women of our age, women of our experience and wisdom and compassion, what we have to offer. And we have so much to offer at this point in time. And it is really encouraging when I'm talking with women like you and with some of the other women that I coach who are really starting to see this path forward that includes some giving back, some service, some bigger, larger meaning and purpose that goes beyond ourselves. And that's, a huge component of what makes life feel good, what makes life feel worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump into that very big question. What does it take to create a life you love after divorce? And is it even possible to do so?
Yes, I think it is possible. And one of the first things I want to say is that I love the point you made earlier about how, if you've just found out a month ago, last week, last night, that you are going to be going through divorce, it can be really hard in that moment to imagine a future. And I think that is one of the values of being part of, something like this podcast, being on your group. I also have a Facebook group, to see women who are a little bit further down the path and understand that it may be so hard for me right now to picture a future for myself.
Yeah,
our imagination just can't cope with that, but it will be possible. There will be a point in time where I can see my way forward. And right now I can lean on some of these other women, men and women who have been where I've been and can tell me that it does get better, and I am going to find my way forward. But oftentimes our imagination just kind of fails us right at the beginning.
Right. I can say I'm going to jump in here because I read a lot of women who their first thought is, oh my gosh, I'm going to be alone forever. And they'll say, I'm going to die alone. And even myself, when I learned that I was served with divorce papers, my first thought was, I'm too old to start over. I'm going to be alone. Oh my gosh. And that's such a common thought. It's very hard to pull yourself out of that as you're going through the trauma of the legal process as well.
Absolutely. And so one of the very first things that you've got to do before you can start looking ahead and thinking about your future and designing a future that works for you is you've got to do the work of healing first. And primarily that's processing your emotions in a healthy way, which is a huge topic that I talk about a lot in my Facebook group, Divorce Recovery for Women Over 60. But processing your emotions, I want to just be really clear about what that means. It's not thinking longer and harder about the situation. It doesn't involve thought at all. Processing our emotions is simply feeling our feelings. And most of us have not been trained in doing that, but it's feeling the sensations in your body. Again, it's not thinking about the situation. It's just feeling, where do I feel it? When I feel sad, when I feel angry, when I feel afraid, to drop out of the thoughts and just kind of do a scan around your body and say, where do I feel that? Am I feeling something in my chest? Am I feeling something in my belly, maybe like a nauseousness or a hollowness or a pit in my belly? Am I feeling a lump in my throat or a constriction? Do I feel pressure on my back or on my neck? But it's simply feeling, emotions are in our body. They're not the thoughts about, I'm so mad at him because, he's left me in this situation. Those are thoughts about your situation. Those are not the feelings. Locate where you feel that anger. Is it a pressure on your chest? Does it feel like heat in your chest? And just observe those emotions. And you're going to have to do this a bunch of times. Unfortunately, it's not like a one and done thing. I'm sure you know this, Lisa, that
right. So you
don't just go through it one time.
You're really validating this is happening and validating this is why it's happening.
Exactly. Yeah. You're letting that energy, flow through your body and just observing it and just noticing it and allowing it. And it actually only takes a few minutes to do that. It'll come up again. Chances are it will come up again. But for the time being, you're just letting those emotions go through your body. Another great thing to do if that feels like a lot, I did this a lot, is move your body. When you are feeling strong emotions, that's another great way to just get that energy out, is to get out, go for a fast walk. I did that a lot when I was first going through divorce. I was marching around my neighborhood at record pace. But, dance or move, any kind of movement is great for dissipating that energy that is in emotions.
Okay. And you mentioned dealing with the negative thoughts, and I guess we refer to that, and you refer to that as ruminating. We have a hard time at first when you're in process getting ourselves out of that negative thought cycle. Can you talk a little bit about some strategies to help you deal with the ruminating?
Sure. Well, one strategy, and it's a really important one, is what I just mentioned. And that's feeling our feelings. So to do that, what you need to have happen is you need to stop thinking about the situation and put all of your focus, all of your attention on your body and where you are feeling those emotions and what they feel like. Do they change? All of your attention. Your mind is going to want to tempt you back up into, thinking about, and then he did this, and then he wants to do that, and then he, all of the ways that you've been wrong. But feeling your emotions is one strategy, and it's a really crucial one for getting out of your mind, out of your thoughts, temporarily. But, that's how we make progress, is a little step at a time. Mm-hmm. That's one way that you get out of your thoughts. Another suggestion I have several other. One that I make for women is if ruminating is really a problem for you, to give this a try. Schedule a time that you will allow yourself to ruminate, that you're just going to go bananas and just let it all out. And say that's every evening at 7 p.m. During your day, when those thoughts come up, write down the thought that is nagging at you, that you keep spinning over and over in your brain. Write it down somewhere. Have a journal handy, or write it down, in notes on your phone or something. And tell yourself, okay, got it. I am going to set this aside for now, and tonight at 7 p.m., I'm just going to let out every thought I have about this, on this topic. It'll take some practice, and your mind's going to want to niggle at it, right now. But with practice, I've found that this can work. This technique can work. And then when you get to that assigned, designated time that you've set aside to actually go through all those negative thoughts, set a timer. Don't have this be an endless process. Set a timer, 15, 20 minutes. Get out a pen and paper. That's an important part of this. Don't just sit and think about it, but actually write down all of the thoughts on, take the very first thought that you were ruminating during the day and just write down everything you can think about that one thought, every way that it's true, every way that it hurts, everything about it that you can think about. Just let it all out. If you finish and kind of wring out, all of the dirty water with that one thought, feel like it feels complete, go on to the next thought that you had and write everything you can about that. And then repeat the process the next day. And it's just a way to kind of, have some time that you can release without having your entire day consumed by, that endless spinning of negative thoughts that can be so common.
When I think about that process, it's kind of like emptying the cache in your computer or deleting your history. It's like one at a
That's
time.
A great analogy.
You're going to analyze that, think about it, and then let it go. So that
and there are a couple of reasons why I love writing things down. First of all, there is something about taking that jumbled, kind of dust ball of thoughts that are in our brain and actually, moving that through our arms, through our fingers, tips onto a page that can kind of, I'm a knitter, so I sort of picture like a jumble of yarn that's gotten tangled together that can kind of untangle, the various threads so we can see them down on paper in black and white. Oh, this is what I'm thinking. Oh, this is another thought I'm thinking. And sometimes even just seeing it clearly down on a page can bring a little insight, can bring a little clarity where we look at that and say, that's kind of a wacky thought. That makes no sense. Or, that's pretty, all-consuming. That's pretty absolute. Do I really believe that? So I think writing can be super helpful.
I think it also helps with dealing with the worst-case scenario thoughts in our head. We often go to, what is the worst-case scenario? And we don't think about the opposite side of that. What's the best-case scenario? So
absolutely. That's what pessimism is it's kind of pervasive. It's, we think it's going to be forever. It encompasses all areas of our life, and it feels very personal. I think it's pervasive, perpetual, and personal, that it's all happening to me. And sometimes getting it down on paper, we can start to see where well, is it really, every single area of my life? No. I have, some things that I'm still very grateful for, some blessings in my life. I have some wonderful components of my life. And again, just getting it down on paper can help you to sort of untangle that ball of thought in your mind where you can just see it a little clearer, and that helps.
Now, you made the point about, to create a different future, you have to deal with reality and not fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
So does that whole process of dealing with the rumination and writing it down and letting it go free you up to start to begin to create that, what do I want my future to look like?
Absolutely. And that's so now starting to look forward into your future, that is a really critical piece of it, is being able to be very honest with yourself about your situation and taking full responsibility for your future. And I'm not suggesting in any way that you're taking responsibility for your past and any hurts that, harm that you suffered. This is taking responsibility for your future and getting very, very honest with yourself about, where you stand and what you need to do. I'll give you an example. When I was going through divorce and feeling very uncertain about what my financial future was going to be like, I knew that I needed to get a job. I was 60 years old. I actually have an MBA from top university. I'll throw out the name, University of Michigan, that I got in the 80s, many, many decades ago. But I was living in a tiny mountain town in Colorado. No corporations of any form there. Very, very few businesses at all. And I also had been a stay-at-home mom for a long time. So I knew that the likelihood of me being able to use that MBA to get a high-paying job was slim to nil. So I took a job. I worked in reception at a medical office. It was very humbling, and I could have, clung to that belief in, but I have an MBA from a top name school. This job is way below me. That's not being honest with my situation and what I was facing. And so I took the job, and it actually ended up being a great experience. It got me out of the house. It got me out of my head. I made some good money. I was interacting with people, and that helped me to get my confidence back. Socially, and it was good for me in so many ways. And that all came from being honest with myself about my situation and what was possible for me in that moment.
Yeah, you do see.
And I think that's a critical piece.
I would agree with that. You do see a lot of stay-at-home moms who struggle with that. If they were home for 20 years and they don't think that they have skills that are transferable, but you have to be reminded of times when you were successful and had successes and you have capabilities, and think about your whole background in the sum total, volunteer opportunities, think the times that you were working that could translate, and like you said, getting out, starting somewhere, you're making connections.
Yeah.
You're getting out every day. You're pulling yourself away from your current trauma and causing you to think of other things and meeting people that can lead to something better. But you don't know that until you take that first step.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm not suggesting that it's like a negative thing, like, I don't have any value. I didn't see it that way. I mean, the biggest part of that reality for me is that I was living in this teeny, tiny town that had no corporate jobs at all. Now, right around that time, the corporate world has changed a whole lot, where you don't need to be living, in the same location. And so that definitely has changed. And if I were going through divorce now, that would probably change, that calculation for me, that there are more opportunities in that regard than there were. But, even just jumping into what I did jump into, I brought so much value to that job. I mean, they could see that at that skill level that I brought a whole lot of maturity, a whole lot of people skills that a lot of people who were applying for those jobs didn't seem to have or were lacking. And I'm sure that if I would have stuck with that career, it just didn't happen to be what I was called to, that there would have been many opportunities that would have presented themselves. The point is just that it's important to just be honest about what the situation is and make the best of it. Certainly do not underestimate what you bring to the table, even as if you've been a stay-at-home mom for decades. We tend to do that. We tend to underestimate our worth, and I think that's an important part of this honesty is not just the woe is me, but being very honest about good and bad of this is what I have. And this is what my situation is. Yeah.
As you were talking about that, I was thinking, and you bring common sense, having that maturity and dealing with so many different situations, you've developed a lot of wisdom and common sense that's so valuable in the workplace that they don't get with everybody. So I thought, that it does make a lot of sense. So
compassion was a huge one that I think, with the decades of life that we've lived, when I understood when someone was coming into a medical office, that's not a happy day for them for the most part. They're coming in and they're afraid. There's often not going to be good news when they go behind that door. And I think it takes some life experience to get to that place where you understand that, versus someone who's younger who hasn't lived life and may not have that same understanding of, oh, wow, this is, when someone walks through the door, they're not at their best because they're afraid. They're going to be dealing with something that may not be pleasant for them.
And that's huge. Just being able to have empathy and compassion for people.
Yeah. And again, for me, this gets to the value, so much value that people of our age can bring to the table that we underestimate over and over and over again. That we don't see all that we've experienced, all the wisdom that we've accumulated. And by this point in life.
Yeah, that brings me to the point of, you were talking about the truths that you need to accept. That not only the truth about the reality, but the truth about what an awesome person you are, and the truth about how capable you are of creating a future that can be something that you love. And so can you talk about some of the things that go into that whole defining what the future looks like?
Yeah. And that's one of the biggest parts of my job as a coach is to help people, is to kind of turn the mirror around so that you see yourself more clearly. And that is a huge challenge. I like to remind people that when we are going through something like this, this huge upheaval, this huge catastrophe, this huge disaster in our life, which is how, most people view a massive life change like this at this point in life, it is so easy for our self-esteem, our self-worth, just our sense of who we are, the picture that we have in our minds of who we are, to take a huge hit so that we no longer see ourselves clearly. We have just such a warped and just diminished view of who we are and what we're capable of. And that's my job as a coach, is to turn that mirror around so that you start to see yourself more clearly again and start to see that, yes, this thing has happened to me, but I am so much more than my divorce. I am so much more than this one thing that has happened to me. And that is, that's a huge part of my job. And it's, for a lot of people, the biggest obstacle that you will face moving forward into the life that you want aren't the circumstances themselves. They are your thinking, your thoughts about, this is what is possible for me. That's going to be the biggest obstacle. It's those limiting thoughts, like you said, that say, oh, I'm too old to start over. I'm too this. I'm not smart enough. I'm, not worthy of a better future. Blah, 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 blah. It's all of those limiting thoughts. Those are the biggest obstacles that most of us will face.
And some of those thoughts have been exacerbated by the person that you were with.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And over time, they made you play into those thoughts and believed those thoughts. If you were with somebody who was belittling and critical, and then suddenly you've adopted that mindset on yourself. And you have to go back through the steps that you've talked about to kind of shift away from that mindset and start to believe in yourself again.
Yep. I know in both of the Blossom groups that I've run, that seems to be kind of the overarching theme that the women in the group would come to by the end of our time together, is that I am no longer going to play small.
Yeah.
I am so much more than I have been led to believe, than I have believed of myself. And I'm no longer willing to do that.
That's a powerful mind shift.
Oh my gosh, it's beautiful.
Right.
And you've been in the group, and you can just see, I run these groups on Zoom, and so I have everybody, and I'm looking at everybody's, picture in front of me, and the physical change in demeanor and just how the women show up within the video, it's remarkable to see the change. As the weeks go by. In the beginning, they're kind of small in the frame, sort of hunched over, and I don't know that they're moving any closer to the computer. I don't believe they are, especially if they're sitting at a table or a desk. It's not really possible. But as the weeks go by, they take up more space in the frame of the video. Shoulders go back, chest is forward, sitting taller, face brightens. I mean, it's amazing to see, how what's happening inside is reflected on the outside. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's true. It's a process of going from I'm too old, I can't do anything, to reclaiming myself. I reclaimed myself, and I started to believe, hey, I have some skills. I could do some things, and even if I never marry again or never date again, I'm going to have a pretty fantastic single life. And that is a complete mind shift to beginning to craft that life that you can be very satisfied and happy with.
Absolutely. It's big. The other important part of moving forward into a life is that you have to, it's all about priorities. It's all about priorities. You can't have it all. Even if you have all the money in the world, you have limited resources. In addition to money, we have limited time. We have limited energy. And if everything is important, then nothing is truly important. So I think a really huge part of the process of moving forward into the life you want is to lay all your cards on the table. Take a look at all the different parts of your life. And most of us have pretty busy, pretty full lives with a lot of responsibilities, a lot of things to take care of, a lot of people that we feel responsible to or for, and get all of that laid out so that you can really take a look at, do all of these things that I have in my life, are they serving me? Do they really align with what's most important to me, what my values are, what my biggest dreams are?
Yeah,
what do I want to accomplish before I die? I think it's important to face our mortality and say, what's the legacy I want to leave? If I knew in 10 years and 20 years and 30 years that I'm going to be gone, what are the dreams that I really want to accomplish during my lifetime? And in order to make space for those in our busy lives, we have to make sure that the other things that are in our lives are important and are not distracting us from our ability to move forward with what's truly, truly important.
So that really comes down to even the things that you consider important, like a house and your possessions. Are those things hampering you? Are they like an albatross around your neck? And would you be better served to let them go and experience freedom from those burdens?
Yeah.
And I think,
I love that.
Yeah, and that's where I am. That's, I paid to keep the house and a lot of possessions, and now I'm looking at it saying those are really keeping me from certain freedoms. And are those really important? Will those serve me going forward? And what do they contribute to, as you said, my legacy? And so my thoughts now are maybe it's time to let those things go. And as you said, sometimes freedom is the abundance, and freedom from those types of possessions.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great opportunity to create our own definition of what is important to us rather than just accepting the cultural definition. It's interesting because when I look at how women go about recreating their lives, it kind of falls into three different patterns. The most common is that to the extent that it's possible, they try to recreate exactly the life they had before, minus the pesky ex-husband. And again, for your listeners, I deal primarily with women. But they try to recreate their life minus that spouse that is now gone, down to, everything. If the type of house they live in, or maybe they're still living in their marital home, they want to maintain the same friendships, live in the same town. And I'll talk to them about it, and they're not happy with the life that they have. They don't feel like they really connect with the friends, maybe, or maybe I got to stay in the house, don't I? But the house is a huge burden to them, and feels like it's like you were talking about, maybe constraining them from other things that they'd like to do. But that seems to be a common thing we stick to what we know. Uncertainty doesn't feel good. So,
right.
Clinging to, this is the way life's always been, that's often a comfortable place to go.
Yeah, but I can relate to that 100%. So
yeah, and I'm so thrilled to hear that you're questioning, hey, is this really serving me right now? I've done the house thing. I'm guessing you've done the house thing for a long time.
Right. Yeah. And it
maybe
is
it's time for something different.
Keeping that same life minus the ex. And that's not freedom. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is an opportunity to kind of take a look at all the different components of your life and redesign a life that really works for you. And most people will, without some sort of a big life change like we have gone through to propel them, to force them to change, most people will just kind of keep, plodding along in their life, never really questioning, what they're doing and whether it works for them. I'll give you an example from my days when I was working in that medical clinic. Patients would sit down in front of us, and the first thing we needed to do was confirm all of their demographic information. And I'd ask, are you still at, 100 Pine Street? And inevitably, they would look at me like, just asking the question, like, are you out of your mind? And sometimes they would even say this, why would I've lived in that house for 50 years? Why would I move now? Why would I move now? I've been there forever. And I would always have kind of the thought, of course I wouldn't say this, of why not?
Right.
Why not? Yeah. People, we just, without this change that we've undergone, our tendency, inertia is a huge force in our lives, and our tendency is to stick with what we know, even if it makes us unhappy, even if we're miserable, to just keep everything exactly the same, keep banging our head against that same proverbial wall. And that is one of the opportunities that we've been given with having our life shaken up in this way, is that we are forced to kind of look at all of the pieces and say, how is this all going to land?
Yeah, it is that one opportunity.
Life is going to change.
Yeah, this blew up. You might as well blow it all up and see what you can put together and make out of it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And and there are ways that you can do this where it can feel very gentle and very compassionate and works for you. It doesn't have to feel like, okay, my marriage is blown up. Let's just, go for broke and blow it all up.
Right.
I'm a huge believer in small and sustainable, to do what feels comfortable to you. And there are definitely ways that you can take itty-bitty tiny steps consistently. That's the key, is to do it consistently. And make massive changes.
Yeah, working through the process. And I was joking about blowing it up, but because I firmly believe, don't make any huge decisions for the first year. Let yourself settle into your new normal. Work through this healing process and work through the process of identifying your authentic self and what you want to do. So.
I agree that it's really important to take your time with it, and to be feeling inside of you, be checking inside of you to say, how does this feel? How does this feel to me? Not comparing yourself with, other people on a Facebook group or well-meaning friends who are telling you what you need to do, but to be constantly checking in again, going full circle here, but checking in again with those feelings and saying, how am I doing with this? Does this feel like this is too much too soon, or does it feel like I'm ready to start looking ahead, to start focusing on my future? I think if you do that, you will know when the time is right.
That's very important. It's an intensive discovery process, but the timeline that you're on is your own timeline and not somebody else's. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Well, Holly, I know that you're at a hard stop and with other commitments. I really thank you for your enlightening conversation today. You have an excellent framework to help anybody in this stage of life get through it and determine how do they want to live their best life. And I just wanted to ask you to share your contact information with our listeners before we close out.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I should mention that I do one-on-one coaching, and that's actually my favorite way to work with someone, is for just you and I to have an hour-long conversation where we can really dive into what you are struggling with and help you see a way forward. So you can reach me at Holly Holloway. So that's HOLLY HOLLOWAY, coaching. So those 3 words all together, Holly Holloway Coaching @gmail.com. And again, I have a Facebook group. It's just for women only, and it's called Divorce Recovery for Women Over 60. And you are welcome to join that group too. It's a big, rowdy group of women at all stages of the divorce process. And there's lots of wisdom shared there, wisdom and understanding and support shared in that group as well.
And I have to say, I've scheduled a separate time with Holly to work through just a very particular issue that I was dealing with. And she was extremely helpful in having me see the big picture, how to work through it, even working with me on conversations that I needed to have. So,
oh, good. I'm so glad that it was helpful to you, and that's the work that I love to do. I love helping people see their way forward, which is usually involves just connecting them with themselves and their own wisdom. We all have the answers, but we have blind spots, and we doubt ourselves. And again, it's me. I'm just holding up a mirror. That's my job as a coach, is to hold up a mirror and say, "You've got this. See, it's right there."
It helps you see around the corners a little better.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, thank you. And for our listeners, I ask you to join us on the next episode and make sure you subscribe to the Silver Divorce Podcast. I welcome your feedback. Please email me at silverdivorcepodcast@gmail.com or join our Facebook and Instagram pages at Silver Divorce Podcast. I also ask, please leave us a rating and a review. Those are very important to grow the podcast and to attract great guests like Holly. So whether you are considering divorce or are newly in the divorce process, we'll help you navigate, and we're going to tell you things your attorney might not tell you. Until next time, remember, divorce is one event. It's up to you to create a life that you will love. I'm Lisa, and we'll see you next time.